The great silent majority is rising like never before, and under our leadership, the forgotten man and woman will be forgotten no longer. With your help, your love, your vote, we will put America first.
Welcome back to America Decides. Donald Trump, the former president, had the crowd behind him at this weekend's conservative Turning Point conference in Florida, where several of his opponents were booed on the stage. While a majority of the Republican field has avoided so far going toe-to-toe with the former president, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has made it clear that he believes running around the front runner is not a winning strategy.
What is your path to victory?
Through Donald Trump. There's no other way to do it, George. There's not a separate lane or, we've heard these conversations before in presidential races. In this Republican primary, there is one lane to the nomination, and that lane is right through Donald Trump. He's at the head of it.
Leslie Sanchez and Chuck Rocha join us now. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist who served in the George W. Bush administration. Chuck is a Democratic strategist and the president of Solidarity Strategies. He previously served as a senior advisor for Senator Bernie Sanders in his 2020 White House campaign. Chuck, let's begin with you. When you look at the Democratic race right now with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. kind of creating a little noise against President Biden, what do you see?
Well, I think it's what it is. It's a little bit of noise. Like, Biden is clearly going to be the nominee. He's put together the operation. He's got a real campaign running. And I think what really bothers me as a Democrat is you've got folks out there on the far left of Bernie Sanders, left of the party, that at a race that's going to be so close, you don't need to lose any of your support from the left, the center, or the right of our party.
Do you think there's any chance that Senator Joe Manchin runs for the Democratic nomination?
I think in money, in politics, no labels, all the chatter that you hear out there, I think anything's possible. When you go and talk to voters about Joe Biden or you talk to them about Donald Trump, who I think probably will be the Republican nominee, I think there's an appetite out there for something different. And I think that No Label sees that. And I think Joe Manchin kind of sees it as a way to raise his profile as well.
Leslie, speaking of an appetite for something different, is there an appetite for something different inside the Republican Party at this point? Governor DeSantis clearly struggling. What's his path ahead, and where is that Trump alternative, if anywhere?
Sure. Robert, you raised a really important question. I will tell you, my sources say that a lot of folks are looking at putting their dollars in entities like No Labels. Now, that doesn't mean that there's a big swing, Republican voters moving in that direction. But the quiet conversations in this invisible primary that revolve around money, people are looking for alternatives. There was a big interest in Governor DeSantis, earlier this year. I think with kind of the mishaps of the campaign, people are reevaluating. But this is, again, what happens at this point in the primary. Why you have the Iowa straw poll, why you have retail politics, is for people to get to know these candidates better. So anything is possible right now. But in terms of a way forward, there is a growing appetite for an alternative to the former president.
Could it be Chris Christie, Leslie?
No. I don't see a way forward. It reminds me so much of like former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. It was somebody who's really good on the stump, had a lot of great things. People like the argumentative style. But where was the grassroots base? And I think Chuck could agree with that. Where are you going to get that support in those early primaries? And the numbers just don't add up when you look at who has operations on the ground.
Chuck, you've worked with Senator Bernie Sanders at a high level. Are his voters going to show up for President Biden come 2024?
I think they will. And I think what I'm seeing in focus groups, and I'm working in races around the country in Arizona and Nevada, and you see that they will because they don't want a Donald Trump. It's not that they're in love with Joe Biden, but Joe Biden has delivered enough for the progressive cause, mainly through Build Back Together, Build Back Better. And then you have Donald Trump there who just reminding good progressive Democrats that he appointed 3 conservative Supreme Court justices that just took away a woman's right to choose is a big deal for progressives, moderates, and conservatives in our party. And I think that there'll be a lot of that reminding going on as we lead into this election.
So tonight, No Labels, this group that's thinking about putting together a third party or independent ticket, is in Manchester, New Hampshire at St. Anselm College, and they're debuting some of their ideas. Senator Joe Manchin will be there. He's not making any endorsement of the group, it seems, or leaning into a run, but by being there, it says something. Let's listen to former Senator Doug Jones about this event.
It is a fool's errand to think that a third party can win in this country. There is no way on God's green earth that they can get to 270 electoral votes, which means they will be a spoiler.
The question is, who would Manchin be a spoiler for? Leslie, let's begin with you, then go to Chuck. If Senator Manchin decides to run on the no labels ticket in 2024, would that take away votes from only President Biden, or could he maybe win over some of the moderate anti-Trump votes inside your own party?
You know, certainly anything like that is possible. I mean, we harken back to, of course, you know, you think of Ross Perot in 1992. It wasn't under no labels, but that was a significant shift of an alternative, enough to disrupt not only the primary, but disrupt the general. And when, as Chuck alluded to, you have these too close to call elections, you can't really fracture a very delicate balance of your base in that way. So I think ultimately it affects the Democrats, but you would pick up some Republicans who just don't see the direction of the Republican Party going in a centrist kind of conciliatory work on both sides approach that a smaller percentage, I would say, Republicans support.
Chuck?
I think this hurts Joe Biden. As a Democrat, I think it does, and I think that they know that. And I think No Labels knows that. I think that's why you see most of their money coming from Republicans. You see most of the consultants around them as Republicans. They'll sprinkle in a few Democrats here and there, but they know what they're doing. They're hurting Joe Biden. They're hurting Democrats. They want to make sure a Republican is in the White House and that Joe Biden is not. And that's what I see out there every day when I'm hearing about No Labels and seeing that the people that they're hiring, look at their FEC reports, look at the money behind them. It's always follow the money.
If President Biden decides not to run, Chuck, do you believe Senator Sanders would run for the nomination?
I think that's a big if. I mean, I think the only way he doesn't run if there's some kind of health scare or something, and I think there'll be a lot of people running, probably including Bernie Sanders.
And Leslie, when you look at the Democratic field, how are Republicans seeing President Biden's chances?
I think there's a lot of conversations that he is a weak president and there is an alternative. You hear so many people saying the bottom half of the ticket that does not look very strong in these early polling numbers would be a very good contest and contrast against the current president. So Republicans are feeling strong about the caliber of the candidates, the diversity, the strength of their ability to mount a national campaign. But all of the oxygen in the room, again, is taken by the former president, which is why I'm going to add this point at conversations I'm having in Texas with big bundlers. People that raise a lot of money are talking about no labels. And that was the last thing I expected to hear. But people are trying to move the pieces on the board strategically to find a way to move forward.
Well, we're going to be keeping a close eye on all of this, Chuck. I mean, Senator Manchin is in New Hampshire, says something. And Leslie, all your points appreciated. Chuck, really appreciate you stopping by. This is going to be quite a race. You never really know what's going to go on in American politics. My motto is always assume nothing.